My name is Linda Smith, and today I'm going to be talking about the overview of the laws that impact transition and an overview of adult services. As a parent that has 4 adult children with disabilities, and as an adult myself with disabilities, I have learned that once your child graduates from high school or ages out at age 22, that doesn't mean that you finally get to say, "Goodbye, child," and your child's done and you never have to worry about your child with a disability again. What it means is that you now say goodbye to certain laws and certain services, and you have to begin again on some new services. And this can seem kind of challenging. In fact, originally I thought it felt like I had gone over a cliff and was just free falling at the moment. So the idea behind these transition services and these transition series that the Utah Parent Center is giving is to give you some ideas so that you can work with your youth, and that you can work so you can step together hand in hand with your special educator and adult service providers, and that you can work so that both of you can go hand in hand so your child is ready for the adult services as they age out at age 22 or graduate at age 18. First of all, we're going to talk about some of the laws that impact individuals with disabilities. There is the American with Disabilities Act, or the ADA, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. Now, you may have used part of this in school. There's also the Section 504 Act of the Rehabilitation Act. And all 3 of these acts are anti-discrimination laws. There's also the Ticket to Work or Work Incentives Act, Improvement Act of 1999, and the Health Insurance or Portability and Accountability Act of 1996, or we love to call it HIPAA. The Americans with Disabilities Act has a definition for disabilities that is also used in Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. And interesting enough, that definition was just changed thanks to a lot of advocacy done by parents that have children with disabilities and by individuals that have disabilities. Before then, there was court law that for some reason exempted individuals with learning disabilities and attention deficit disorder, many times in the Americans with Disabilities Act. With this new definition and some of the words that were added, now individuals with learning disabilities and attention deficit disorder are included in the Americans with Disabilities Act, as well as the Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. The definition of disability, the term disability means a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major activity of such an individual. A physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or major life activity, a record of such an impairment, and here's the interesting one, or an individual that is regarded as having such a disability, as being regarded as having a disability. So you don't necessarily have to have a disability. You may be regarded or teased as having a disability. Some of the major activities include, but are not limited to, caring for oneself, performing manual tasks, seeing, hearing, eating, sleeping, walking, lifting, bending, speaking, breathing. Now here are some of the new ones though. Reading, learning, concentrating, thinking, communicating. And then the final one is, and working. Major body functions include, a major life activity might include such things as functions with your immune system, normal cell growth, neurological, brain, respiratory, circulatory, and other functions within your system. And they can include everything from sleeping, employment, walking, anything that affects your life in the community, employment, in school, or any other thing like that. An overview of the Americans with Disabilities Act. It prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities in employment, transportation, public accommodations, communications. And the one I want to really emphasize is activities in the state and local government, including colleges and universities. A lot of times we don't think about that, but our local community recreation activities and community centers, our colleges and universities, all of their programs need to be ADA accessible. Implications for transition. As far as your students with transition, it also requires in school that all buildings and programs be accessible to the student. It also requires that services that are provided in colleges, universities, or that employers provide be non-discriminatory, and that the procedures be non-discriminatory, and that reasonable accommodations be given. Now, what does this mean to you as a parent and to the individual with a disability, your student? It means as a student, that student needs to learn about their disabilities. They also need to learn about their strengths so they can tell the individual, the employer, the university professor what their strengths are, but also what type of accommodations they need. And what better place to do that than when they're in middle school and when they're in high school, starting to speak out for themselves and say, I might need somebody to take notes. I might need somebody to help me write down what my homework's going to be. I might need a communication board. So they start getting used, so the student starts getting used to advocating for what accommodations they need. So when they turn 18, they're not confused about their disability or what that issue is, and they can advocate for themselves. The next is the Rehabilitation Act. And the Rehabilitation Act is a recognition of rights and capabilities of individuals with disabilities. And it's also a reminder, the Rehabilitation Act is about employment. Individuals that seek employment through the rehabilitation. And the Rehabilitation Act was started because there was an underemployment of individuals with disabilities. What does that mean as far as transition? It uses the same definition for disabilities as in the Americans with Disabilities Act. It also uses the same definition of transition as in the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDA. It reduces gaps in services and barriers to assessing services, and it requires the Department of Rehabilitation and Education to work together in funding and training, meaning that when your child is receiving transition services through middle school and through high school, you want to ask that as you're having your IEP, that you have a vocational rehabilitation service provider come in to your IEP meeting, and you start talking about if your student will need vocational rehabilitation services, if they're going to seek employment, what those services will look like, how do they become eligible for those services, and who do they contact for those services. So when the time comes for your student to leave school services, they already have contact with that vocational rehabilitation service provider, and they already are eligible for services through vocational rehabilitation, and they're already setting up their vocational rehabilitation services. Rehabilitation Act has other key areas related to transition. One of them is eligibility. Is the individual eligible? Are they eligible for employment? Do they want to be employed? And that doesn't mean right at that moment their employment might require job training. It might require education to become employed in the area they want to become employed in. It may require assessment. What grade level are they on in reading, in math? What careers would they be good at? How well do they do in fine motor skills? How well do they do in other skills that would help them in their career? It could be career development, individual. And now here's another interesting one. In special education, you had an IEP, or the Individual Education Plan. In vocational rehabilitation, you have an individual plan for employment, or what's called an IPE. And each individual makes their own plan for employment and sets down goals and objectives under that plan. And then you talk about funding and how that plan will be funded. Next, under the Rehabilitation Act, you have Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. And Section 504 under the Rehabilitation Act protects persons from discrimination based upon their disability status. Now, the difference between Section 504 and the Americans with Disabilities Act is Section 504 only helps with programs that are federally funded. So if the college program is a federal program, which most state universities and colleges are, or if that program receives state grants or federal grants, then they are covered under the Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act and need to provide accommodations and accessibility under those programs. The following program is the Ticket to Work or Work Incentives Act. Now, this is for individuals who have Social Security, either Social Security incentives or Social Security disability incentives. And the Ticket to Work or Work Incentives Act was put together to help individuals who who want to be more self-efficient. And it was an act that was put together because the government felt that there were disincentives for individuals to go to work who were on Social Security benefits. And so when a young adult turns 18, if they receive Social Security assistance, they'll receive what's called a ticket in the mail. And this ticket will have a number on it. And if you lose the ticket or they lose the ticket, don't worry. You can call the Vocational Rehabilitation Office or the Social Security Office and they will give you the number again. But basically what the ticket does is it's supposed to increase self-sufficiency and increase the individual's choice in obtaining either vocational rehabilitation services or other employment services or other support services the individual might have. Currently in the state of Utah, the provider that is used the most is the Utah State Office of Rehabilitation. However, there are a few other employment providers that can be used, as well as the ticket can be used at the same time for other employment services. For instance, if you needed job skills training, like how to write a resume, or other type of job skills training, you could use the ticket for that at the same time. The ticket also removes barriers that require people with disabilities to choose between health care coverage and work. You now can remain on Social Security benefits and retain your health care coverage. That disincentive has been removed with the new Social Security Act and the Ticket to Work and Work Incentives Act, which is really exciting. And they have found through studies that it is far more reasonable for you to go to work, and you will make more money, and you can retain your Social Security and your health care benefits for a time. if you do go to work. It also assures that more Americans with disabilities will have the opportunity to participate in the workforce and lessen their dependence on public benefits. So the old disincentives are no longer there. And so everybody is encouraged now to go back to work and to use their Social Security incentives and to also use their health care coverage and to also use employment. The final law I'm going to talk about for adults is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, or HIPAA. What information is protected under HIPAA? The information that is in your medical records is what's is provided. It is it's the conversations with your doctors that you have, or with your nurses about your health care treatment. It's some information about you and your health insurer's computer system. It's information about your billing system. They cannot sell that to other people. They cannot give that to other individuals. And it's most other health information about that is held by those who must follow this law. The Office of Civil Rights enforces the HIPAA privacy rules, which enforces the privacy of individuals' identifiable health information and the confidentiality provisions of the Patient Safety Act, which provides identifiable information being used to analyze patient safety events and improve patient safety. Now what rights do you have? You have the right to ask to see and get a copy of your health records. Now you may have to pay for a copy of those health records, to make a copy of those health records. You may have to pay 5 cents or 10 cents or whatever it costs for a copy of those, but you have a right to obtain those health records. You have a right to make corrections and have those corrections added to your health information. You have a right to receive a notice that tells you how your health information is used and shared. You can decide whether you want to share and give permission before your health information can be shared. You can ask to get a report on why your information was shared. And if you're not happy and you believe that your rights are being denied or your health information isn't being protected, you have the right to file a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights, or you can file a complaint with your provider or health insurer, or you can file a complaint with the U.S. government, either one. And so those are different things. Who are the different people that don't have to follow HIPAA? Life insurers, employers, worker compensation carriers. Many schools and school districts do not have to. Many state agencies like Child Protective Service agencies, many law enforcement agencies, and many other offices. Now, what have I told you about the different things? The one thing that as parents you need to really understand about all the adult laws is that as an adult with disabilities, none of these services or laws work unless the individual with the disability is willing to disclose or tell that they have a disability. They don't have to go into a lot of information and say, I have mental health issues, and I have bipolar, and I have learning disabilities, oh, and I have intellectual disabilities. They don't have to go into all the information. All they have to say is, I'm an individual with a disability. But they do have to disclose that they have a disability if they want to receive protection under any of the adult laws, such as the Americans with Disabilities Act or the Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. That goes for the colleges and universities. It goes for rights as far as recreation, and it especially goes for rights as employers. One of the discussions you're going to want to have with your youth is when they want to disclose their disability. They don't want to disclose that they have a disability with everybody that they walk down the street with. And they will want to decide when they want to disclose their disability with an employer. Do they want to disclose it before they seek a job, at the time that they apply for a job, or do they want to disclose their disability after the job offer has been given? Those are all decisions that the individual with a disability needs to make. But they also need to practice, just like any good speech maker, on how to talk about their strengths and why they are a good person to be employed, why they're a good person to have in that university class, what their strengths are. Teach them to talk about why they are so special, what makes them the individual that they are. Teach them how to talk about their disability and how it becomes something that is good, that it becomes a special ability. Because all of us with disabilities have creative abilities. For instance, I have attention deficit disorder and learning disabilities. But that also means that I'm highly creative and that I have many more ideas in the creative process than a lot of other people do. And I can use those skills and add that when I'm talking to my employers. Think of all the wonderful things that your students can do at the moment and start looking at their strengths. Maybe it's that they can find everything on the floor and pick it out. Maybe they can hear certain sounds. Maybe they're really good at organizing things or finding things in telephone books. Whatever their strength is, whether it's art, whether it's math, whether it's computers, whether it's just collating papers, make sure you're working on those strengths during junior high and high school, and so that they learn to talk about those. There are 4 things to talk about and work on from the time that they're little. First, they need self-knowledge about their disability. Make sure they understand their disability, because it'll take time for them to accept their disability. Next, after self-knowledge, comes self-acceptance. And I'm here to tell you, as an adult with a disability, self-acceptance is a lifetime goal. And it comes and goes, just like transition does for each one of you. And each time you have a crisis, so does self-acceptance. Each time I have a crisis, I have to go back through the self-acceptance phase and say, okay, I have a disability, it's okay. The next tool is self-advocacy. Talking and speaking up for myself, and that I have the rights to have certain rights within school and in employment, and that those are rights make me equal and allow me to be equal in the class. When I went back for my master's degree, for the first time, I used the Disability Resource Center and different services through the Disability Resource Center like a note taker, even though I could take notes, and it made a big difference in how I could do my classes. And then after that comes self-determination. Make sure you use those steps and start working with your child when they're young. And it's a lot easier process, no matter how significant your child's disability is. They can start advocating for themselves. Encourage your son and daughter to take the lead on the team. Understand what services are offered in the adult system. Network with professionals and other parents that have been through it that can say, oh, have you thought about this service or this service? Ask for a statement of rights and appeal procedures. What is the system? How do you go up the chain of command? Become active on advisory boards. I'm here to tell you that every state agency has an advisory board, and they're all looking for parents and individuals with disabilities to sit on that advisory board. Take the time to get involved on advisory board. You can learn a lot about the laws as well as about the people that work in the system, and it really helps your student. Attend and participate in public comment meetings. Get on their website and you can find out when those public comment meetings are. Develop strategies and supports for your student or with others who need the same services, and for yourself, because it will take a lot of support for you to get through these different systems and find other parents that are struggling as they're going through the systems. Now we're going to talk about some of the adult service providers. I'm going to list some of them, and then we'll go through them slowly. Some of the adult service providers include vocational rehabilitation, which is employment for people with disabilities. Choose to Work, which is also employment, and they work between Vocational Rehabilitation Services and the Department of Workforce Services. Then there's the Department of Workforce Services, which is also employment. Notice I put all three of those together because they're all employment. After that, you have Centers for Independent Living. Centers for Independent Living work with individuals to help them to live independently in the community. After that, you have Social Security Administration, which is the Social Security Insurance and Social Security Disability Insurance. Then you have Work Assistance and Benefits Planning, which shows you how to be employed and to keep your health care insurance and many times your Social Security benefits while you're employed. Other adult service providers include the Division of Service of Mental Health and Community Mental Health Services, which help individuals with mental health. They also include substance abuse, and so if the individual is having problems with substance abuse, you can also go there. There's also the Department of Health, which has several services, which we'll talk about in a minute. Adult Education, which is a great service that many of you don't realize is there, which includes basic adult education in reading and math, and also getting your GED. There's also Disability Resource Centers, which seems to be a hidden resource, which is for students with disabilities in higher education, the colleges and universities. Then there's the Vocational and Technical Schools, the Utah Applied Vocational and Technical Schools, and many of those have what's called an ADA specialist that can help students with disabilities. Then there's disability organizations such as the Utah Parent Center that can help you, and private providers that can help you with services like group homes and other services. The Utah State Office of Rehabilitation, their mission is to assist and empower eligible individuals with disabilities to achieve and maintain meaningful employment. Now, listen to that. Achieve and maintain meaningful, not just any employment, meaningful employment. It includes counseling for the individual, medical, psychological treatment, assistive technology, job placement, follow-up services, assessment and eligibility, and other services. For instance, many individuals, we tend to think, well, they have a significant disability. I don't know if my child can be employed. And I've heard that many times. Yet I know so many individuals with significant disabilities that are employed. One of my good friends, Brian, is employed at the Utah Center for Assistive Technology. He is totally paralyzed all the way down from his neck down. And he uses a puff and sip straw. And he works on computers with different assistive technology devices. And it's amazing to watch him. There are other individuals with significant disabilities that can work. And there are different levels of employment. Think about job training services. Think about on-the-job training. There's also what's called supported employment services, where an individual goes with that person on the job and helps them work on the job each day. So there are a lot of job supports out there. Following that, the individual can also receive training through the applied technology centers, or they can receive training through a college and university to receive a degree for their employment training. So there's a lot of supports and services out there that we don't think about, and we automatically assume that our student might not be able to be employed. Stop and talk to individuals who work in the employment services before you automatically decide that your child might not be able to be employed. The Utah State Office of Rehabilitation includes Choose to Work, which is for individuals that are ready to work and just might need a little job support or have had a job before and might just need contacts with employers. They also do excellent job fairs where you can go out and they'll have those job fairs and you can seek employment with employers that have had disability training to work with different people with disabilities. They also have a website that lists employers that have jobs out there that have been trained to work with people with disabilities. The Utah Center for Disability for Assistive Technology is also under the under the Utah State Office of Rehabilitation. Their short name is known as UCAT, and they have different assistive technology that you can try out before you ever purchase it. They have the Computer Center for Citizens with Disabilities. There's also Utah Benefits Planning, Assistance, and Outreach. There is a wait for these services, but they are excellent, and what they will do, if the individual has Social Security assistance and they want to be employed or are employed, they will work with that individual to put together a specialized plan just for them that will show them work incentives that they can use that will help them increase their Social Security benefits and keep their health insurance while they're employed. There's the Division of Services for the Blind and Visually Impaired, and the Division of Services for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. All of those services out of the Utah State Office of Rehabilitation. Next, you have the Utah Department of Workforce Services. I love their website. The Utah Department of Workforce Services says, we provide employment and support services for our customers to improve their economic opportunities. So this department includes Choose to Work, once again, to work with people with disabilities, food stamps, because we're doing economic opportunities. They have Medicaid within their services, and child care. They also, I said that I love their website, and at the end I will give you a resource for all the different websites. On their website they have what's called Just for Youth, and that's one of my favorites of their websites. On it you can contact the colleges and universities, you can look at adult basic education, it talks about insurance, it talks about transportation, it talks about everything you can think about talking about your youth with. And it gives you Utah contacts for that information. They also have what's called a Utah Job Seekers Guide. And I love these Job Seekers Guide. There's one that's called Tips for Teens. And it has a lot of basic pictures. And then on the page it'll have things like, be well groomed. And it'll say, brush your hair, take a shower. All those things that we keep on trying to tell our teens, and they're going, well, why? You know, be on time, get up. And so it's a great resource. And you can download those off the website, or you can call the Department of Workforce Services and they'll send you these guides. There's also training services, and which will give you some information about how to put together a resume. And they have several resume guides where you can just type in your resume. They have how to do a job interview and different training services like that. Finally, there's the Career Center that you can even take different tests to see what type of careers you would be good at, what type of interests you have. And then finally, there's the section on jobs where you can look to see what type of jobs are hot in Utah right now. What type of skills do you need to be employed in those areas? And what type of education do you need? What skills? What do you need to be good at? How many people are employed in Utah? Where are they employed? All of that type of information, as well as what jobs are listed at the moment in Utah and employers that are seeking individuals for employment. Next is the Centers for Independent Living. I also love the Centers for Independent Living. If you have a student that is shy, doesn't seem to speak out for themselves, the Centers for Independent Living start working with individuals with disabilities at age 16. And I think one of their best classes is the self-advocacy class, where they help individuals learn to speak up for themselves and learn to self-advocate. There's also such things as bus training, how to cook, how to get around in the community. Everything about the Centers for Independent Living is to assist persons with disabilities to achieve greater independence. And the other thing I love about the Centers for Independent Living is, for a long time, I was shy about talking about my disability. I didn't want to let anybody know, and I had a hidden disability. I had hidden disability, so I didn't have to let anybody know. But the Centers for Independent Living taught me that it was okay, that I should be proud of my disabilities, that they were cool, and that they really weren't disabilities, they were abilities, they were characteristics that were unique to me, and that I should speak out about them instead of being shy about them. And it totally changed my entire view about the world of disabilities and abilities. And for that alone, I recommend the Centers for Independent Living. They have centers all the way from Logan down to St. George, Utah. Ogden, Salt Lake City, Provo, Price, Vernal, Tooele, and Moab. So be sure to seek them out. And they also have assistive technology services within their centers. And they will help all students, even those school age, with assistive technology. Social Security and work incentives. The Social Security is so hard to understand, and even calling their general line can be hard. There is what's called on their line called the Red Book. And for years I went, what's the Red Book? Well, the Red Book is their idea of telling you what Social Security benefits are and what you need to understand. Now, if you read it through the first time and you don't understand it, don't feel bad. I actually trained in Social Security work incentives. And I read the Red Book about 5 times before I started getting the words in it. So if you have to have a dictionary by you, don't feel bad. It is a hard book to understand. But learn to understand the Red Book if you have to access Social Security and work incentives, because it will make a difference. The Social Security Disability Insurance, SSDI, and the Supplemental Security Income, SSI, disability programs are federal programs that provide financial assistance to people with disabilities. Both have different rules, so don't confuse the two, because they have different rules, guidelines, payouts. Everything's different about. A lot of it's different, so make sure you know which one you're on, or you can be on both. But what they are special rules that make it possible for people with disabilities receiving Social Security assistance to work and still receive monthly payments. Realize that the disincentives are no longer there not to be employed. And go ahead and have your student apply for Social Security benefits. But also, don't give up if you're turned down the first time, and keep on applying. Next, we're going to the Division of Services for People with Disabilities. The Division of Services for People with Disabilities mission statement is to promote opportunities and to provide supports for people with disabilities so they will have every opportunity to participate fully in Utah life. Now, there are some requirements for DSPD. In fact, many people, you have heard about the waiting list for services. For these services are for individuals with intellectual or physical disabilities which are likely to continue, resulting in substantial limitations in 3 or more major life activities. If you have an intellectual disability, they will come and do a functional skills assessment as well as other assessments. So there are some things that you will be required to have different assessments to apply for DSPD. And if you get on their waiting list, be sure that you contact your provider each year and remind them that you are there. As your student transitions from child services to adult services, that is different lists. So make sure that you contact your service provider and let them know that your child is transferring to adult services and that they're going to be needing adult services. You can also, if you have a DSPD service provider, you can have them come to the IEP meeting. And I encourage you to have them come and be one of your IEP team. They can really be a good assistance to you. The next is the Division of Mental Health and Local Community Mental Health Centers. Mental health services are available to the citizens of Utah. However, funding's become rather tight in Utah in the last little while. And so you can ask, but most of the mental health community services now are limited to individuals that receive Medicaid services. However, there are some factors that change that. So please be sure and check directly with your local mental health community center. And there are local community mental health centers throughout the state of Utah. And if there are mental health services, please make sure that as a student, that your student with a disability gets in and gets the help that they need for mental health services, because children can have mental health issues as well as adults from an early age. After that is the Utah Department of Health. The Utah Department of Health has several, in fact, is one of the largest state departments in Utah, and it has many different agencies and services. I'm just going to talk about a few. One of them is the Maternal and Child Health Care Bureau. Now, your child may have services under this bureau at the time. They may have early on, from 0 to 3, have received Baby Watch early intervention services. And later on received services through child health care services or other health care services or Children's Health Insurance Program, CHIP. But the reason I'm mentioning this particular bureau is because they have a wonderful website that talks about transition for students with health care needs. As that student is starting to think about transitioning on through to adulthood. Next is health insurance under the Department of Health. Health insurance, there's what's called the Primary Care Network, or PCN. This is for individuals that have no health care insurance and are low income. It is usually open about once or twice a year where somebody can get onto Primary Care Network because of the lack of funding for that service, unlike CHIP. But it's the adult equivalency to CHIP. Then there's what's called the Utah Premium Partnership for Health Insurance, or UP. And UP is basically if, as an adult, you are employed by an employer, but you can't afford the co-payment that the employers is saying that you need to pay to get the employer's health care insurance. If you are under the right, if you have the right income level, they will pay your co-payment so you can get the employer's health care insurance. And then there is health care insurance for the uninsurable, and you can get that insurance. Then finally there is Employment Personal Assistance Program, or EPASS, and this is a program for individuals on Social Security assistance. And once again, this is a fabulous program in the sense that you can hire an assistant to help you with anything you need to become employed, to be employed each day, whether it's to do the dishes, to drive you to work, to do the chores at home, whatever you need to maintain employment, as long as you are employed 20 hours a month. So it's a great service. Finally, we're going to talk about education. The Utah State Office of Education has what's called Adult Basic Education, and I just became aware of it. I knew that there was adult basic literacy programs, but that was for individuals that couldn't read at all. And so I thought, well, what happens to the individual that can only read at a 3rd or 4th grade reading level, and they want to go on to, say, a technical school that requires a 5th grade reading level? Where are they going to get their reading skills up, or where are they going to get their math skills up? The adult basic education courses are for those individuals. They can take those courses through the Utah State Office of Education. They're throughout the state to get their basic math skills and their English reading skills up so that they can take classes in college, or they can read better at work, or they can get a better job, whatever is needed for math and reading. The other is to get their graduation degree if they did not get it when they were in high school. After that, you have the Utah State Board of Regents, which includes the Utah Colleges of Applied Technology, which are also known as UCAT. And they have what are called either ADA resources or study centers that will help students that have disabilities to help them if they are struggling through those colleges. Or you have Utah colleges and universities. And these will go by different names, but they're what are called Disability Resource Centers. So look them up as Centers for Disabilities or Disability Resource Centers at each different college. Now, the thing you need to know about them, however, is interesting enough. The qualifying information for each disability for the Disability Resource Centers at each college and university is different. They want to make it difficult for you, I guess. And so you have to get on each university's or college's website and then get on their Disability Resource Center website and see what the qualifying information is for that particular disability. And no, it will not be the same necessarily that is what was under your special education IDEA. You may need extra information that was not required under IDEA. So you need to find that out, so if you have to have extra testing done. Also, the testing must be done within the last 3 years. So if there isn't extra information required, make sure that your student was tested within the 3 years of high school before they planned to graduate. For more information about these different services, I didn't put up their telephone numbers or their websites because they tend to change. So for more information about these services, you can contact the Utah Parent Center, where we have several parent consultants and wonderful office people who can help you. We have what's called a state resource guide that lists all the state agencies and services with also with a list of how to go up the chain of command. And it lists their websites, a little bit about what each state agency does, and their phone contact information. And some of the resource information in there even adds the local contact site for your local area in the state. And that website is www.utahparent, and that's single, P-A-R-E-N-T, center.org. Or you can contact us by phone, which is area code 801-272-1051. And we love to get your calls. It's wonderful to talk to you around the state. The time to plan is for the future is now. Don't wait until your child turns 18 and has graduated. Don't wait until they graduate out at the age 22. Don't assume that your special educator is going to know everything and that you can just sit there and expect the special educator to hand everything to you. They might be learning the system the same as you. Think about, from the time your child starts in 9th grade, start thinking about contacting local state agencies and the adult services. Start asking for information, for pamphlets, for handouts about their services. What are they like? Can you send me a pamphlet so I can start reading about you and your contact information? Start thinking about setting up a college fund. Think about setting up a trust fund. Apply for Social Security when your adult turns 18. If you feel that your young adult at 18 cannot speak for themselves or is going to have problems with health care, health insurance, going to the hospital, or understanding the doctor, or they're going to have problems with their own financial, start thinking about guardianship and seek guardianship and what that requires, and find out about what that requires before they turn 18 and be ready to apply for that at age 18. Don't wait until your child's in the hospital, ready to go to the hospital, and the hospital tells you, no, your child can't have this surgery because we don't think they're capable of making that decision and you haven't taken out guardianship. For any other information, be sure to call the Utah Parent Center. We're here to take a longer time. This was just a short coverage of all and many varied laws and state agencies. But we're here to take far more time with you as you need the information. Thank you for listening to us today.